theme. And I was surprised to learn that E.E. Cummings was as much a painter and an artist as he was a writer and a poet. And I found and he's a Unitarian, he was a Unitarian. I found an interesting interview, an imaginary interview that he wrote where he connects his painting with his poetry. And I'll share it with you at this time. Why do you paint? For exactly the same reason I breathe. That's not an answer. There isn't any answer. How long hasn't there been any answer? As long as I can remember. And how long have you written? As long as I can remember. I mean poetry. So do I. Tell me, doesn't your painting interfere with your writing? Quite the contrary. They love each other dearly. They're very different. Very. One is painting and one is writing. But your poems are rather hard to understand, whereas your paintings are so easy. Easy? Of course. You paint flowers and girls and sunsets, things that everybody understands. I never met him. Who? Everybody. Did you ever hear of non-representational painting? I am. Pardon me? I am a painter, and painting is non-representational. Not all painting. No. House painting is representational. And what does a house painter represent? $10 an hour? In other words, you don't want to be serious. It takes two to be serious. Well, let me see. Oh yes, one more question. Where will you live after this war is over? This was written in 1944. In China, as usual. China? Of course. Whereabouts in China? Where a painter is a poet. When I was a newspaper reporter, I had one or two interviews that went along those lines. Very frustrating. At this time, please rise as you're willing and able. For our next hymn, The Arching Sky of Morning Glows, number 330. Another new one. I should warn all of you that don't come here very often. The reason that you use are such terrible singers is because they're too busy looking forward to see if they agree with the words.
Terry, I disagree. It's because we're Reformed Catholics.
Our speaker this morning, Martin Morena, was born in 1950 in Adrian, Michigan, where he grew up speaking Spanish at home and English at school, while his parents worked in the fields and foundries. After graduating from the University of Michigan with a Bachelor of Fine Arts, his first job was teaching art to prisoners of the Michigan Department of Corrections, and he might have a story or two to tell about that. Martin does not always do what he terms pretty art. In his words, I believe it is the artist's right, even duty, to point fingers and depict the seamier side of humanity when needed. His career proves his commitment to that philosophy. Martin is the art director of Las Artes de Maricopa County, and for years has worked closely with at-risk youth, using art to help them transform their lives. He also is a founding member and past board member of the Arizona Latina Arts and Cultural Center, one of 12 artists chosen for the locals' only exhibition at the Phoenix Art Museum, the 2011 recipient of the Arizona Governor's Artist of the Year Award, recipient of the Promoting Community Involvement and Education Award from the City of Glendale, and one of 14 artists, including his son Reggie Casillas, commissioned by the New Times parent company to create political cover art for the Coast to Coast publication of an article on SB 1070 3 years ago. Of course, Martin could not accomplish any of this without the love and support of his wife, Sylvia Hernandez Moreno, who's here today. But Sylvia, nevertheless, with her support, often wishes that Martin could do just a little bit more of the more saleable pretty art. So please welcome Martin Moreno.
Good morning. Good morning. I don't use microphones. I usually walk and talk when I present. Terry had asked me to do this sermon, and I'm not. I don't do sermons. I do lectures about art and the importance of art and how it affected my life. I think that every artist creates based on their experience, their life experience. In order for you to understand why I do what I do, I need to backtrack a little bit and talk to you about my past. I was born in Michigan, the son of migrant workers. My native tongue was Spanish. I was taught by nuns and priests. So very early in life, my Spanish was taken away from me because back then bilingual education consisted of a yardstick. So we very rapidly had to learn English, right? My mother was my greatest inspiration to become an artist. She had like a third grade education. She was brought to this country as a child. She was undocumented. So the things that plague our country today are things that plagued our country 100 years ago. My mother had magic in her hands. She would make our clothes, so even though we were very poor, our pillows were full of embroideries of little birds and flowers, so that when we went to sleep, the things we went to sleep were these beautiful images that really touched me. She inspired in me the belief that if I could see it in my mind's eye, I could create it. And that's something that I've aspired to all my life, to teaching young folks, a lot of whom have been in troubled situations. I've tried to teach them that there is more to their life than what they have, right? That they can become. When I was about 14, my father got a job in the factories, in the automotive industry around Detroit, where we had to we then could leave that migrant stream and become a stable family. However, my father suffered from a disease. My father was an alcoholic. So consequently, I think our family suffered a bit, because even though he provided for us, right, the words of wisdom that normally come with a father's purpose were not there. When I was 16, my mother passed away. So basically, from the time I was 16 on, I was kind of on my own. My father wasn't there very much. My older sisters had moved out of the house, so it was kind of just me trudging through life, making my mistakes. And believe me, I did all the mistakes that a young man makes, getting involved in drugs and violence and hatred and bitterness and the poor, pitiful me syndrome that can happen. At the age of 16, I did something that's kind of illegal. With the stroke of the pen, remember, my mother had taught me how to create, so I became very creative. At the age of 16, I changed my birth certificate so that I was now 18, magically. I applied for a job at the factories, at the Chevy plant, got a job. Started making like $300 a week. For a 16, 17-year-old kid, this is a godsend or something, right? I went out and I bought myself a 1966 Ford Mustang 289, 4-on-4, ragtop, right? Who could ask for more, right? I thought I was on top. But there was a void in my heart and in my soul. I did not know why I was placed on this earth. So at the age of 17, I sold my ride, I quit my job. I told my dad, I have to go see the world, or at least part of the world. We're talking the late 60s, a time in the history of this country where it was in turmoil. The Vietnam War, National Organization of Women was fighting for their rights. Cesar Chavez was organizing the farm workers, and this country was in turmoil. I'm sure many of you remember those times. And back in those days, the thing was, you hitchhiked. You went out west to find yourself, right? To find who you are. And I did so. I traveled all over this country, hitchhiking. I ended up in Mexico City, in a place called La Plaza de Tres Culturas, which means the Plaza of Three Cultures. And before me, I witnessed the pyramids of the Aztec people, which I had no idea what my history was. The skyscrapers of the Mexican people, my people. The cathedrals by the Spanish, my people. I had this richness that I had no idea I was a part of. I sat myself down at the Plaza de Tres Culturas and I began to draw. And by this time, I was very good at drawing, right? If you're a young, poor artist, the first thing you learn how to do is to draw with a number 2 pencil on notebook paper, right? Because you have nothing else. I learned how to draw, and then I began to sell my work there at the plaza. Day after day, sitting at the plaza. Tourists would come by, beautiful piece, would you like to sell it? Yes, ma'am. So, In a matter of a couple of months, I made enough money to fly back to Michigan. Forget the hitchhike stuff. I'm not going to do that anymore. Enter school. I got my degree, and I've created art ever since. As Terry mentioned, my purpose in art is sometimes a little bit different than most of the young artists today. I don't know if you've seen the graffiti art that's up, the spray paint art. Most of that is very ego-oriented. My work is community-oriented, to create social change and to create commentary, to create dialogue with my audience. And anybody who has the gift of sight, the gift to be able to see and appreciate the artwork. So, given that, let's take a trip. Let me share with you some of the images that I've created in the past. Terry, when I say next, you just hit it, okay? So, this is one of my first pieces that I created back in Michigan, 15 feet high and 150 feet long. This is the only part of the mural that you see when you're cruising on this one-way street. This is what you call the hook. Anybody who studied Diego Rivera knows that there's an art to muralism, right? That the first thing that you must see to hook your audience is something that's very non-threatening, maybe aesthetically pleasing. And so we created this image of the flower to bring the audience in. So if, in fact, you want to see the rest of the piece, you have to get out of your car, walk through, and this is what you see. Farm workers, right? With the gesture of the crucifixion. Right? You gotta remember I have this Catholic background, you know, so you're gonna see a whole lot of this stuff. But anybody who's ever worked in the fields knows this gesture. This is a gesture of resting after you work. Anybody who's ever been in the infantry can also maybe relate to this gesture when you're trekking through the marshes to keep the guns, the weapons dry. Slide. Next. Michigan is a right to work state, so it's a union. No, Michigan is a union state. So the unions are very powerful and served a very important role in my upbringing. The rights of workers, the rights of people, of humanity. Justice is a very big thing in my life. What you see here is the dehumanization of people, where people are things molded into boxes, right? When people are dehumanized, then you don't have to deal with issues that confront them, right? And that's what's happening in this piece. Slide, please. I am a firm believer in humanity, where people helping people out of these boxes and climbing onto this road. The feathered serpent. The feathered serpent is the ancient symbol of sky and earth, the ancient symbol of the universe, the ancient symbol of universities, according to the Toltecs. This piece is kind of a tribute to Frost and the road not taken, right? The road to education. Slide. Slide. I worked with high school kids on this piece, and I tell all my students, if it doesn't move, you paint it. I went to lunch one day, and when I came back, they had painted the telephone pole in there. Slide. This was painted with a now very famous and successful art historian, Dr. George Vargas. We collaborated on this piece in Detroit. Martin Luther King's auntie used to come by here when we painted this piece and commend us on the job that we created. it's a tribute to the city of Detroit and the diversity that exists in that city. Slide, please. One of the issues that I deal with a great deal in art is issues that confront neighborhoods. They're called barrios, ghettos, right? This particular piece was created in South Phoenix, where the biggest issue in the neighborhood was heroin. At that point in time, the dangers of an overdose were very obvious. The introduction of the HIV virus was just now coming into play. So the neighborhood asked us to create this piece, to create this dialogue between the different communities that were being considered responsible for the heroin problem. And that was the African American community and the Mexican American community. So what we created was where the hands cross in the center. That's probably the most important part of the piece. Where the hands cross, the color disappears. Terry, please. Next. And the statement behind that is that when you're dealing with a community problem, a community issue, color is rarely the issue. In this particular case, it was economics, who has and who doesn't have. I've worked in all parts of the country, and I found that once you deal with those issues, the other stuff kind of just disappears. Slide, please. Slide. This particular piece deals with the problem of aerosol. Of huffing. It's called huffing. Where young folks were utilizing the chemicals inside the spray cans to get high. An issue that still exists, right? I'm kind of proud of the fact that when we created this image, it was shortly after legislation was passed in Arizona, making it illegal to purchase aerosol paint if you were 18 years of age and under. You know? And this was one of the pieces that kind of helped spearhead that whole movement. Slide, please. Slide. 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 When Terry asked me to speak about spiritualism and purpose of art, this is one of the pieces that is very important in my career. For those of you who don't know, this is the Virgen de Guadalupe, which is considered the patron saint of the Americas, and very important in the Mexican American community. Let me tell you the story behind this piece. This is Arlen Park, South Phoenix. This was created about 20 years ago. A young girl, with baby in arms, watching her boyfriend play a game of baseball. It's an evening game, lights are on. A car comes by and shots are fired. And the bullet ricochets off a light pole and kills the young girl with baby in arms. After they caught the young man who shot into the air, his defense was, I wasn't aiming at nobody. That takes nothing away from the fact that this young mother was killed. These are called random acts of violence. What's unique about this story is the fact that months after that, the cousin of this young girl, walking his girlfriend home from school, he was like 13, 14 years old, in front of this wall, car comes by and shots are fired and the boy is killed instantly in front of his wall. According to the police, the family was not involved in drugs or or gangs. This was another random act of violence. Months later, at the wedding, the father of this family, at the wedding of his youngest son, time of joy and rejoicing and jubilation, a car goes by, shots are fired, no one is hit. However, the son, who is carrying his own piece, points back at the car and shoots at the car. However, his father happens to step in the way of the crossfire and he kills his own father. True story. Shortly after that, this community asked me to create this piece, not as a memorial, but as an effort to create people to think before they acted. Right? So this piece was one of the first times that a religious icon was allowed to be painted on a city building, right? And this is at a city parks and recreation building, which was unheard of. But since the neighborhood was so isolated, right, this was allowed somehow. Got through the legal system, but it's kind of an important piece. Slide, please, sir. Terry had told you that I did teach at Jackson State Prison, which at one time was the largest federal prison in the country. And later on, you're going to see some of one of the symbols I utilize a lot in my art, and that is the bleeding rose. While I was there, I noticed that a lot of the young men had these tattoos of bleeding rose. And when I asked them what was that symbolic of, they indicated that the rose is symbolic of the beauty of life, right? And then the little drop of blood that comes off the thorn is symbolic of the pain that exists from time to time in our lives. I just wanted to share that because of the hymn that we shared about the rose. Kind of was, that came out of nowhere. I didn't know where that one was coming from. Sorry, please.
This was a portrait of my grandfather, who fought in the war and worked in factories and died in a factory. Slide, please. And a tribute to my firstborn son.
Do you ever remember seeing this movie where it's based on a book by Alex Haley, Roots, right? Where this young African warrior holds his newborn child up to the sky and the stars and says, "Behold, the only one greater than you." Well, that image just stuck in my head because it reminded me of the fact that there is nothing more important than life. That this child could grow to become something, right? A king, a ruler, a leader, an artist, right? Someone that could change the lives of people. So I created that image stuck in my head. I created this mural as a tribute to my firstborn. Later on, Walt Disney created the same image and made a whole lot of money off that same image, right? Remember that? With a monkey or something. Slide, please. Slide. When I painted this piece, I had no gray hairs. Now I would look like this old guy, you know? Slide, please. City Dads was a mural I created, and it was a tribute to young men who accepted responsibility for their children. Many times we hear about these deadbeat dads This project was sponsored by a program called City Dance, where it celebrated the young men who accepted that responsibility. And I thought this was such a powerful program that we created this piece as a tribute to them. Slide, please. You'll see that in a lot of my pieces, education is very important. It's a very intricate part of my projects and the programs that I provide and the inspiration I provide. Justice, you'll see that liberty holds the scales of justice, a very important image in my life. And obstacles, the broken glass, the cacti, the fence, the barbed wire, the things that keep us from becoming, I think are important. Now, that could be whatever it is to you, whatever obstacle comes in front of you, right? Slide, please. Slide. Slide. This painting was a tribute to one of my dear friends, David Hernandez, who was a musician and then came down out of nowhere with this blood disease that took him away from us very early in life. So this is Chief Joseph. I created this piece like in a matter of a week as a tribute to him. Chief Joseph was leader of the Nez Perce people. Slide, please. I wanted to make it look like somebody ripped open this wall and found the Sacred Heart of the city. This was painted in the oldest community in Phoenix, around Grant Park. Slide, please. Slide. The Maricopa Freeway. I-10, 15th Avenue and 19th Avenue, if you're ever in that area, those are the areas, those are two murals that I created with the city of Phoenix. Slide. This is Mother Earth. Slide. 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 We didn't have the little thing, so I know slide is a little annoying at times. Next, please. This piece was supposed to be celebrating the railway on 19th Avenue in Coulter, but the gentleman who built this facility sold it, and then the gentleman who purchased it repainted the mural, which this is no longer in existence. Slide, please. Sorry. So this is 22 feet high, you know, and it was a huge piece. Slide. Slide. This is probably one of my oldest still standing murals. Wesley Community Center. This is like on Buckeye and 15th Street. This was I don't know if you can see this too well, but there are three figures buried in the bottom strata of this mural. When you work in the inner city, there are very ugly things that happen sometimes that are not addressed. This particular piece, the three figures that are in the bottom strata of this piece represent three of my students. One committed suicide. One was killed by a drive-by shooting, and the other one overdosed. It's a sad commentary, but these are things that must be said and spoken of, right? in order to create this dialogue that's so important for us to create change in any community. Slide, please. Slide. I celebrate my culture, my heritage. These are Mayan images. Slide. This is in Chandler, and this talks once again of the dangers of drugs, of illicit drugs. That you'll see it at the bottom. The heroin, the speed, the different drugs that are out there on the street. Slide, please. Slide. Slide. El Rio Neighborhood Center. This is in Tucson. Slide. Slide, please. This is a collaboration that I created with my son and about 3 other of my kids they're now professional artists, and I'm real proud of. Slide. This is a tribute to South Mountain High School, which is now a magnet school for the arts. Slide. 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 Next. Next. Once again, the Bleeding Rose. Let me close this with just one little story that I have, which really really touched me. And this is a story that I've really never shared publicly. About 25 years ago, I was working in an area called Garfield District, which is like Roosevelt and 15th Street in downtown Phoenix. And I was working with a summer youth project. I was working with kids from the neighborhood there. There's a place called Alwyn House, which is one of the oldest art galleries in the city of Phoenix, run by a gentleman by the name of Kim Moody. We were in the back. We had about 15 kids with us from the neighborhood. We were creating a 3-panel mural. We hear this, the screeching of tires. And it comes to our attention, then we hear this loud crash. This was in front of the Alwood House. We were in like a fenced area, so we couldn't see anything. We could just hear what was happening. Obviously, it was some kind of car accident. Kim, who was the director of the Alwyn House, ran to the front of the house, and we heard him scream. I told the worker that I was with, I said, stay here, keep the kids in this enclosed yard. I ran to the front to meet Kim, and Kim was hysterical. He said, they're all dead, is all he could say. I indicated to him to calm down, to call 911. I ran to the front of the house, and across the street you could see where a van had plowed into a home. And as I walked closer to the house, to the left there was a young boy who had been obviously hit by this van. The boy was not moving. To the right of the van was a young, what appeared to be the mother and a young girl. They were crying. They were conscious and crying and in pain. I went to the van, and I could see on the porch there appeared to be a young girl, but it was only half of her. She had been hit by this van and cut in half. Half of her was on the porch, and the other half was under the van. There was no blood. This was like an eerie sight that I could not believe. I went back to the boy, and I tried to take his vitals. Put my hand on his chest and looked. CPR training kicked in. There was nothing. And while I had my hand on his chest, I felt the presence of another hand. And it was dark and old and calloused. And I heard a chanting. And I tried to remove my hand. And I was on my knees, and I guess it appeared like I was praying. I could not remove my hand. And shortly after that, another hand appeared. And then another one, and then another one. Till there was a stack of these old hands and this chanting that played in my head. And I couldn't move. And the next thing I remember was a hand on my shoulder saying, "Sir, you need to move. You need to get out of the way." And I looked up, and it was the paramedics. And I looked down, and the boy was moving. And I got up, startled and confused. And I looked around, and by this time I had an audience of older Mexican people. This was a neighborhood where it was primarily Mexican-American community. And I asked the ladies, I said, "Where are the people that were here praying with me?" And they said, "Mijo, son, there was nobody there with you. You were alone." And I never told that story. I shared it with my wife days later. Because I couldn't hold it in. But I couldn't share it either because little unbelievable, I guess. So I think I was there for a reason. I think I was there. I was some kind of a conductor. I was there for something, but I was there because of the art. I was there because of the kids. And I think I'm here because of the art and because of the kids. Thank you.
Should tell you though that not all of Martine's pieces of art are 15 by 150 feet. So we do have 3 pieces at our house, and very beautiful ones that we prize. Now please rise at this time as you're willing and able, and join in our closing hymn, "We'll Build a Land," number 121. Familiar. One more. Becky? One more. As we extinguish our chalice, please join me in reading our mission statement as a demonstration of our fellowship, our support for one another, and our commitment to the wider community. We agree to provide a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for living better lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual searches. Thank you to our musician today, Rocky Dadwer, to Louise Slada for our chalice lighting, to our greeters, Fanny, Joel, and Dylan Foster, to Mitch James for his videography, and to all others who are helping today, and of course, to Martin Marina. E.E. Cummings described art in this way, which I'll provide as our closing words. Art is a mystery. All mysteries have their source in a mystery of mysteries, who is love. And if lovers may reach eternity directly through love herself, their mystery remains essentially that of the loving artist, whose way must lie through his art, and of the loving worshipper, whose aim is oneness with his God. Thank you. Please join us for fellowship at this time.